Greetings. I am Christopher Otwell, the professor for this class. This is week 1 of IT417. We'll be talking about data extraction, transformation, and loading, which is a database migration and data manipulation process, a series of processes in order to convert traditional sources of data or existing databases to more modern data lakes or larger databases or modernized DBMS systems. So welcome to week 1 of this class. We'll be running a 5 half-week class. There'll be 5 presentations along with additional work. I've been in the industry for a long time. I am the professor for this particular class. This is the second time I've taught this class. I've uploaded to the portal the previous recordings that I've made of this class in the case that something I might say during this recordings for this class is not as clear as it should be. You can catch my previous recordings to give you a different perspective on the same kind of topic. Since it's been 8 months ago since I last taught this class, that perspectives do change. Otherwise, things you can do to help you with be like searching around on YouTube, similar topics, using the Muse website that CTU provides. I've been teaching at the university for a fairly long time at this point. I guess relatively long. 2017 is when I started, January 2017. Online, I don't do many online classes. They have me come in as an as-needed thing because I'm primarily an in-face instructor, and since the world of COVID, that has been kind of disrupted. So the battle rhythm for this class will be that each week I'll provide you a lecture. We'll be doing discussion boards, and there'll be an individual project. I will grade you on that in the context of the individual boards. I'm expecting participation. In the context of the individual projects, I expect a continuing and evolving single document that I will provide feedback with each time that you can then turn around, make additions to, and I will enhance upon each week, adding new sections, adding new content, and I will provide feedback and expect that the previous week's feedback gets incorporated to the prior work in the process. We'll go through this. We'll have this weekly agenda every week. We'll have the presentation here that'll be uploaded each week. The PowerPoint package will be uploaded as a PDF file into the learning materials so that you will have the opportunity to download and review the slides at a later date, to also download audio from the prior recording classes, as well as the ability to watch the live chat. And if you know how to, you can download all the files from the live chat as well and record them in your own system like I do, because I save all my lecture material into my Plex server at home. So we'll go over weekly agenda, expectations, syllabus, assignments, any Q&A. Since this is a one-person class this time, as a directed study most likely, these will be kept to, anything that you want to learn, you have to send me questions about, and I will review or discuss anything you have in the email or on discussion boards, or anything that happens to come up as a recent topic related to ETL and, the general piece. So as you get an idea from my experience, for a period of time, I worked for Sun Microsystems in what was the original software development team that became known as Java 1.0 or 0.1, however you want to look at that, the original Java. I worked for various military programs for the US government over the years. Vast majority of my career has now been pretty much 25 to 30 years now, been going on doing military programs for Space Force and Air Force. My areas of focus have been cybersecurity, big data analytics, computer architecture, system integration, networks, and now data center design. So I'm now in the process of leading a team that's about to build out I'll say a robust, medium-sized private on-premise cloud for a couple of locations. We'll call it medium in the fact it's going to be, I would say, close to 90,000 cores of compute, probably 100 terabytes of RAM in the compute data center itself for the private cloud. Various classes I've taught in the past, mostly networking and cybersecurity focused for Colorado Tech. The only ones that I've teaching online have been spreadsheet applications and this class, which is ETL. And apparently I need to fix that because I overwrote my own. One moment, I overwrote and screwed it up myself. Make sure I'm sharing again. Okay, I think I am sharing again. All right. Also, let me know if there's audio issues with this particular setup. Since I don't do much teaching from the home, and the last time I taught, I didn't have a headset. Just make sure that I think the audio is working. But if you don't see this, but you see the recording, if you're not seeing the slides, but you're seeing the video, or some combination thereof, you should be getting everything. And if there isn't issues, let me know. Okay. Anyways, all right. Blah. Okay. ETL, data extraction, data transformation, loading. This course is going to be talking about how to deal with the 4 layers that involve the ETL process: the functional layer, the operational management, the audit layer or control layer, and the utility layer. Each of those have different purposes in life. We will be going over what each of those purposes are. Pretty much one of the layers dedicated to pretty much each week's discussions. We'll talk about how those achieve the goals of taking existing data, be it any generating source, be it a recording of information that's prior or live streamed, and how to transform that into what can be recorded and then utilized by applications from the database or the data lake. So additionally, your book is the Pentoa Kettle Solutions, building open source ETL solutions with Pentoa data integration. That does involve a little bit of programming in the way that book course is set up. I only expect you to know enough about SQL programming to be able to work on the individual project to answer a couple of basic questions and maybe a SQL script. Beyond that, you don't need to worry much about the programming interface itself. But it is going to be in this package. We'll tell you how to download it and get it set up. Each week we will go over outstanding questions. Those questions I want you to provide, and I will answer as best as I can. If I will either do that in the discussion board or I will do that in the weekly video chat. We'll go over any hanging chads, which are defined as things that I did not do a good job explaining the prior week. or has caused questions, or in my retrospect, I did a poor job of answering, and I needed to rectify how I approached that particular topic. So interactive participation will be a must. You can ignore the last bullet. This is my standard agenda that I started with live classes on working at the campus in Aurora, Colorado, because I happen to live near Denver. So about 10 to 15 minutes drive from the Aurora campus. So that's where I've been over the years taught my stuff. Week 1, we'll talk about requirements analysis, assessing the information needed, defining what the enterprise wants, what their goals are, and how the ETL can help meet the needs of that enterprise. So that you have a track of it, the discussion boards are worth a third of the total value of the class. The individual projects worth the remaining 2/3 of the value of the class. Obviously, you need to complete the majority of both in order to achieve success and passing grade within the class. And my goal over here is to help guide you to that so you can complete your degree and finish out your plan. That's why they have me do directed study at these, is in order to help people achieve what they need to achieve in order to continue on and complete their degree. So initial reminder, they changed the dates as of this starting this quarter. Now initial discussion boards are due by Thursday, and the follow-up posts are due by Saturday. I will get in there Thursday and Friday to respond to anything you post, and I will add questions in order to get you to interact on the discussion board. And those questions and the responses to those questions will feed into the part of the discussion board grading process as we go along in this way. So you can feel free to tell me about your background, what you've been doing, what you're looking for, your goals, where you're wanting to head off to, what is it you'd like to do in your career, and I will help you as best as I can along the way, since I have over 30 years of experience in the field now, and probably another 10 years ahead of me in my career as well. To give you some idea how long I've been around computers, I owned my first home computer back in 1984. Back then, the average population in the U.S., less than 4% of the households had anything that resembled or was recognized as a computer. People were still doing things like adding microwaves and washers and dryers and TVs to their house at the time. And I actually owned my own computer out of a little city in called Dowagiac, Michigan. Population today is close to about 6,000 to 8,000. Back then, it was, I think the high was close to 20,000 total population, but it got decimated by the manufacturing issues that the Rust Belt itself had. But just coincidentally, I happen to be one of less than 4% of the people in the U.S. who actually had a computer and have had a fascination with computers ever since I was very young. So I've been a system engineer, a network engineer, programmer, data analytics, metrics, you name it. I've done that as far as system engineering in my career, and I can help you with anything you want to know. So for a directed study, remember your posting is going to be due by Thursday for all your initial posts, and I will then add pieces. I expect you to have about 100-word reply. I'm not going to be that particular on a thing, but do you please make an effort to put in a couple of sentences that are close to 100 words at least. If all you're getting is yes/no answers, then I'm not necessarily going to accept that as credible responses. So my goal is to get you to interact and answer questions and to give me your thoughts on topics. Like I said, hanging chads are basically areas where I didn't feel like I did a good enough job presenting material or needed a better level of explanation in the material that I did present previously. So, and if you have questions, definitely send those questions my way via email. That is going to be probably best for this class, since this is a directed study class, and I do this at this time of day because I want to make sure that I get the teaching part out of the way before I have to worry about my normal full day job here. So either at the house or working in the office. And I do spend more time in the office than I do at my house working. As you can see, I have a fairly extensive little basement set up here. This was new build out this past summer. Yeah. Each week we'll go over the example of what the classes are due week by week and how this goes. Now, what this means is the blue lines, as you'll see, those are no longer being accepted for grading. Yellow are those I'll consider late and apply penalties for being late. Green is due this week. Gray is due next week, and white is all future stuff. So you have an idea how this looks. Therefore, so you know that Unit 1 discussion and Unit 1 reading and discussion boards related to chapters 1, 3, and 19 are what's due this week. Please make sure you make an effort, because Thursday is only the third day into the class, but you have at least a couple of days for the early access to be able to get oriented to what's going on. Late penalties now for CTU are based on a 10% over the first week, if up to 7 days or through 7 days that you're late. That will take off 10% penalty. After that is no longer points being awarded unless I had reason to let those points be awarded. And that becomes at my discretion based on how it is. Now, if you think you have issues with being late or issues based on time, please let me know. I am fairly easy to get along with. So, but per CTU policy, if I'm not notified ahead of time, I am to reduce to 0 on those points. Also, a reminder that as CTU policy requires notification to Title IV financial aid requirements, if you're using financial aid, you have to attend at least during the first 2 weeks in order to ensure that you don't get that financial aid revoked. So now in the learning materials, I will upload the slide package as a PDF file, so you can download it, review these later. So this, what you're seeing right now on the screen, is something that you can download and review later on. So, and you'll find those there. I also uploaded the audio recordings I made for this particular class's prior teachings as well, so that you have that as a reference, point of reference as well, and point of learning, if you so choose to use. Discussion board number 1 is introductions. So this is where you get to tell me a little bit about you, where you want to go, what you want to do, what your background is, what do you feel has been your proudest moments. Just, I'll get an idea for, I can understand you as a student, so I can help you reach your goals ultimately in the end. The second discussion board is going to be talking about things that you need to consider based on what you research or you're reading, what you get out of the book, what you get out of the Muse website, what you get out of any YouTube videos. Yeah, so tell me how the ETL process is commonly used by organizations, and what type of plan do you seek to do with their data, or what they're doing with their data, and what you'd consider tools needed to do it, what should be considered in the process of executing the ETL, the types of reconciliations is, and how can those things be scaled? And scaling becomes more and more important nowadays, because data centers and the generation of data is growing at such a rapid rate that the ability to process data or to understand that data and the need for that data understanding is driving organizations to spend more and more time studying what it means and how it means and what it means to them. After all, the most valuable thing now today in the world is information outside of human life. So it's no longer currency, it's information. Information is worth more than typical currency nowadays. So, and information drives the ability for people to make decisions, to make profit, to make additional money. Now, the first week, there's this Muse website here. This is a link to it. I'm going to flip over to the Muse website here. I'm not sharing real quick. Okay. So in the data requirements analysis part, this is week 1's Muse. There's a couple of videos. You'll see videos by this icon here. The book readings is basically additional text to read and above what the books you're actually paying for. When you see the little eye icon, that is basically a bullet list or another type of reading material you should look at. You do have the ability to acquire it via PDFs if you wish to download it offline. Excuse me. All right. Good, that didn't start. So later on, there was also video. I will play the first video, but in future weeks, I do expect you to go through the video yourself for this class. All right. Let's go back to the slideshow. There we go. All right. All right, week 2 discussion. Topics will be expecting you to answer 2 of these 3 questions. What types of client-side scripting languages exist with parsing data? And what is the future of side scripting in there? That is 1 question out of 3 questions, so don't take each line as a different question. It's each set of questions. You have to answer 2 of the 3. Number 2 is how server-side languages are used to work with all types of data. Is one scripting language better than others? Why? Why not? Give a reason why you think one scripting language is better than another. And client-side versus server-side scripting languages can be combined for best possible ways on how to extract data. God. Apparently my voice isn't going to hold out well today. Okay. That's all I get for just recovering from COVID the last few weeks. Week 2, the data extraction process is the Muse website link. These should be active inside of PDFs. If not, you can just copy and paste it, get to it. The Muse is an additional website the CTU provides as a means to teach students. I thought their goal was with the Muse was eventually was to use it instead of textbooks for students, but they haven't made the move to replace textbooks just yet. So it's certainly an alternative method of additional information that is actually a really good resource. Okay. Week 3 will be about researching online advantages and disadvantages of the DBMSs, distributed database management systems that are used for managing large-scale amounts of data or extensive data lakes. Week 4 will be about key assignments, the key assignment drafts, the outline, how you address your plan, and what you feel about the different phases and rules that you would need in order to execute SQL statements, and those SQL statements that you're going to use inside the individual project at that point. Week 4 is also get into the data loading process itself and what that means in order to ensure that data consistency and data integrity is achieved, and to ensure completeness is there for data lake for future analysis when you integrate multiple sources into one location, and how you map data accordingly. The week 5 discussion will be about various areas of the different phases of the ETL process and how it could affect the data warehouse or a data lake in a positive or negative way, and how temporary tables sometimes necessary in order to transform data to the appropriate formats needed to get the data from one location to another location or different locations into a consistent set of data that actually is collated in such a way that can be cross-referenced and analyzed in a consistent manner. So, I mean, a lot of ways we'll get like medical sensors, right, or home sensors or videos from cameras and stuff, right, where they're all different sources. They did different primary purposes in life, but they may have some threads of important pieces within the sensor data, such as the generation time, the location, geographic or geolocational, uh, time stamped, maybe purpose. Like if you get a bunch of different cameras at various intersections, right? You can have those different cameras that can collate based on time, based on um, location, and then you could have some that are heat sensors, some are analytical, some are 4K graphical, and you can, in theory, have those different types of sensors or cameras collated into the same database, such that you can get a better understanding of what's going on. So, in one case, like you could have a smart city, and this does exist out there, by the way, where there's different cameras throughout the intersections that can, one is used for detecting direction of traffic, one's detecting heat, one's so they can determine if it's cars or humans walking. One is there to determine weather status censoring. One is there to then determine predicted direction of traffic, so that behavioral analytics can be studied such that if majority of the people is going in one direction during a period of time, then they can set up ways to help improve the ability for them to get through that intersection, or to determine when business should be open or closed, when optimal time for selling is for certain areas of town, so that people can run restaurants, for instance, and not have to worry about, well, if it starts to die down this part of town at like 6 o'clock at night, that maybe those are best for afternoon lunches because it's a high business financial district, for instance. Decisions like that can be made, right? Additionally, with facial recognition, you can then use that same sort of stuff to start predicting when people come to these on a regular basis, in order to predict when they'll show up in the area, so that they can be detected or used for law enforcement purposes, right? So, or GPS tracking of individuals. Those are all valid purposes of multiple sensors that get recorded for data analytics. So the whole process of the data warehousing will go into week 5 as part of the reading material and the Muse content. The individual projects. So there will be 2 different, it's going to be 1 project required of you. Sorry. Make sure you have the title page. It is best if you use the APA professional format. If you don't have a copy of that, I can give you a web link to where to download it from the CTU website. It is certainly out there. You need to use this probably to make sure that you have the best structure you can, because I will take off points if you fail to follow APA formatting. Since I am also a doctoral student myself, I have to deal with professors pointing out when I make errors in the APA format. So just so you know, title page required, course number, course name, project name, data submission, a table of contents. I'm only going to expect a typical 1 style table of contents, not the multi-layered table of tables or the table of figures as well. Each week you'll need to add a section with headers each week with roughly 4 pages of content for those sections. These are the different topics I expect to add to the overall project throughout there. Like I said, it's going to be, you provide this week, I provide feedback. I expect the feedback to be incorporated. You add the second week part of that writing, and it's a continuing evolution of the same paper. And over time, you'll have a fairly extensive little project around 25 to 30 pages in length in the end, I hope. If you need to get to the software for the as provided by the class and mentioned in the book, this is the website you go to download it. Pentaho.com, PENTAHO.com/download, and that'll get you started with it. It goes to a Hitachi Social Innovations forum now. So because Hitachi, I think, now sponsors or bought the original author of this book, their material, and provides this data. So like I said, there's going to be 2 different assignments. And here is the one that the CTU default looks at is they want you to explain a 4-layer ETL approach and how in the first part of the project to how it functions to the different layers, how you do it, and you create a high-level diagram for source, destination, target, data flows, and describing how a business structure would make use of this data. Now, I do kind of expect it to write it into more of a description for your organization to use, whereas you can treat me like you're a CEO and you're trying to convince them why this is a good idea and how we want to approach it. Now, what do I mean by that? You can, instead of writing it like a dry paper of research paper, you can try to write it like a thematic selling paper or a descriptive of this is why it's beneficial to the organization, which is generally a lot of people consider to be a little more fun to try to be convincing in your argument as to why it's to do that, and this is the reason to use these types of things. So now, alternatively, if you are stuck on the idea of how to apply the scenario idea to this, I've uploaded an alternative paper. I've uploaded an alternative concept to the it's either the learning materials or the artifacts for the class, where you can give you a more thematic idea of using it inside of a data center and how these would apply to an actual infrastructure data center. Because like I said, I build data center architecture, so to me that is I can be a little bit more robust if you want to go that way in my feedback and help you with understanding what's necessary in that context, because that's the sort of stuff I do on a regular basis. So as opposed to being a managerial review where you're trying to treat me like a CEO, in this case, I'd be like the lead architect and you're convincing why, trying to convince them to it makes sense in that context, and it'll be different pieces of information you'll acquire, but it'll get you along the same lines, right? But make sure you do everything needed with references and cite resources for APA style. I do expect a couple of citations inside the paper over time. This is an example of what a successful week 1 assignment for the individual project would look like from the default provided information. This is as CTU has described what my expectations in order to see it's successful is. So the life of a data warehouse, because the process will be feeding data to the online transaction processing systems from legacy systems, vendors, data marts, data lakes, sensors, and how it is. So you can plan to write code that would then handle the data processing, and how you would go about setting it up in order to do data collation and data merging. So this is the extraction, transformation, and loading process after all. So in this case, you're trying to write the requirements and how you would actually approach the problem and how to resolve it. So it is there to help technical and managerial understand, and that's why a diagram is also going to be helpful for if you build it for the data flow to explain it your point across. If you continue with the normal method to do it, this will be the types of format. You need to have at least 4 different formats with 10 records each in your SQL setup tables that you can just use as a spreadsheet table inside the Word document at this time to start with, before you have to worry about actually writing the actual SQL tables themselves. But then in order to set you up with those, so this would be this kind of stuff. In this case, it would be like phone book type records. So addresses, names, zip code, location, customer ID for a database. Make sure you include at least 10 records, and you can make up whatever you want to out of it. All right, so in most places they'll be using XML, comma separated values, structured SQL database, fixed files, or all types of things you'd require in the real world. So make sure you include that in this kind of stuff. So what kind of rules would you need? What is your focus on your data? Should it be flat file sources? Should it be database sources? Why are you going to choose the differences? Is there a reason why they should be different? How are you ingesting it? How do you intend to use it? how you intend to import it into a script. So the idea is you divide these into multiple sections within that particular chapter of your APA document, and you give me a basis by which you need to do this work. So for week 3, we'll get into you need to expand that to include 5 different validation rules from the SQL statement in order to ensure validity, shorter correctness, and shorter to ensure that data is transformed when incomplete from one source to the next source, so that you can get it there from end to end, right? Week 3 is successful will be considered XML separated and structured tables, fixed lengths. This is where you're going to have your SQL statements actually able to execute and show evidence within the APA document that your SQL statements are working, so that I can see that you got the logic down correctly, that it's reusable, that it can be easily repurposed and modified, and to this point, ensuring that it's straightforward and clean. So one of the biggest things about making ETL work from a SQL standpoint, from a data transformation standpoint, is that the data has to go from source to destination in a very clean manner in order to ensure accuracy. And that could be including taking some lack of data and filling in with default values as part of it in order to ensure that the final structure of all the different sources go into, say you have 10 different sources, but they have different types of values in different orders going into one database that's going to merge all of those 10 sources, so that you have one big table that has all the collated data. And you may have to add default data into certain cells within each record from each source in order to help make that consistent mapping across the board. So you got to make sure you be able to describe how you do that and why you're doing that. Week 4, we'll get into how you load the process, so that that data that gets transported then results into the system in the end statement by using the SQL statements with like insert or load to verify the referential integrity throughout the ETL process. So that's where I'm looking for in the paper to you describe how you do that, how you accomplish it, and what it means to include some screenshots of what you're doing. Here's another piece you want to refer to, or what means successful for this individual project. Week 5, we'll get into what the future data warehouse scenarios can look like, how they can be, and then how they get mapped back to the original 4 layers within the ETL process. And my goal is for you to come up with at least 3 different scenarios, and how those warehouse scenarios would then be processed as part of the description in your paper to try to convince me why it's a good, technically sound process. CSV, JSON, XML, different types of sources can all be used for that. Flat files, those are examples where flat files can come in, or be exports from existing databases of older systems. You can talk about robust and efficient processes, selecting the process that puts them in place, and what's needed in order to, from a tools perspective, in order to help achieve what you need to do. So ETL, loading data, is the stage in which extraction and parsing data can be tested. So if any step along the way is incorrect, then you will end up with incomplete data in the end through this whole process, right? So the idea is you build the table, you build the instruction, you test it, you check it to verify it comes out the way you want, and then you build the next step where you can keep on going, and then eventually you get all the steps in place, and then you go back to the beginning and run the whole data from your gold copy all the way to the end to ensure that all the issues got resolved, the data comes out correct in the end, and you achieve it in the process. And if need be, those temporary tables along the way are your safety net that you go back to, so that you can ensure that your outcome was as expected during each individual step, so that you don't damage the source, and that your destination in the end is exactly where you want it to be. Temporary tables are really good to ensure that you've actually reached your goal in order to meet final production and ensure you have high quality from QA perspective. It also gives you a path of evidence to ensure that you met all of your expected uh, needs, expectations, and that you've achieved comprehension of the data through the process. Multiple datas will stretch data out. Databases can stretch out data, but it is important to keep in mind that in the end, your goal is maximum efficiency for processing data from source, converting it to the format you want, and then getting into the final destination in the process using a well-collated, normalized database, which has as many or as few, not as many, but as few redundancies as possible within the data collated, and puts them into a manner that then can be consistently used from future sources that's going to read on that data. Apparently I had that in there twice. Okay. That's good. 1 second. Go back to sharing. Share screen. Oh wait, why is that not sharing it now? There we are. Okay, I think I'm sharing the right screen again. Okay. All right, the 4 layers of ETL are the functional layer, the operational management layer, the audit balance control layer, and the utility layer. The extraction process is a four processes involved. The extraction is the process of getting the data from one place, such as a text file, a database, or a sensor, to obtain the data from that. Transformation is then taking that data, parsing it, changing it, altering it as need be to make it into a consistent set to be able to load to a database. Loading is then taking those temporary files that you've created and preparing the data to be loaded into a database that can then be used for testing. And the warehousing is there to verify data has been correctly introduced into the warehouse. So in the week 1 discussion, we'll be going over what is the data is part of the requirements analysis, right? So you're going to be trying to do the what, where, when, why, and how type questions on the data. So what does the data do? What's the structure of it? Where'd you get it from? How is it being used? What does the company want to do with it? What is its goals? What software and hardware you need to be able to implement it, and how to map that to a set of tables you're going to need for table structures inside of SQL in order to create the final product, right? Data extraction process is about identifying where the data come from one location to another, or how to get it from one location to another. Staging and testing, setting up what you're going to use to read that data in to ensure you're able to access all the data sources, how to create the map from the source to the destination so that you can take all the data, put it into the place it needs to go, identify your test plan, figure out where your gaps are in the data, figure out where you're missing pieces of data that you need to fill in with preset data or preset answers, or if you're looking for inconsistencies of the data or stuff that's outside of the range, like errors and anomalies, how to adjust those errors and anomalies in order to get it to be within the realms of consistency and legitimacy, right? Data transformation is taking those procedures to extract the data, figuring out where there's inconsistencies in that data set, and is to then process them against what the business believes is the correct corrections in order to make the data right. So say you have a bunch of a heartbeat from a medical place, right? You got your typical patient has heartbeats anywhere from, in my case, 45 beats per minute to typical person, which is closer to 90 beats per minute, right? So that's your range to work with. But if you have like suddenly sensor data is giving you 300 heartbeats per minute, well, that's an error that you need to accommodate for, identify, and potentially either deactivate the sensor or go back and figure out what's wrong with it and to adjust it based on, is it an error on the input? Is it an error on the output? Is there a problem with the sensor itself? and or is the data set something fixable from that? Or just set a flag saying this is invalid data, so that that particular cell has invalid data across the board from that sensor, so that if you have multiple sensors like that, you can eliminate errors, so that you don't have to do uh, um, median averaging against data with against cells and all these different things across a large database. But with those, knowing that you need to eliminate those that have bad cells in various pieces of data, so it doesn't get included in the median averaging across the board on any one given set of data. So that's actually done in large scale data analytics, where um, like the financial markets are constantly trying to figure out how to predict where the stock markets or the trends and the economy is going all the time. So they care about making sure they eliminate invalid data sets, so they can do better data analytics against things, or big data sets, right? Um, there's always errors in large data sets. So the question is what you do with those errors and how you deal with them. Data loading, taking the set, convert it into a new data structure. So your front end data is tested and filtered, and your end result is something you can use in production as your new data structure or new database from multiple sources. Data warehousing is about how to store it, how to maintain it, what tools are used to process it, and then how do you give that to clients in order to access it. In the case of like large systems, you've probably heard of IRS data, for instance, right? Stored up in Utah. Those big sets of data where everybody's financial records and historical records and tax records are all put in there, right? Well, each year that gets expanded upon, but in order to do it, lots of organizations that have to do credit analysis or checking for back taxes, whatnot, they have to be able to access that data. So every year, new data gets entered, but sometimes errors get introduced, and those have to be able to be addressed. And then lots of different remote organizations have to be able to access that data. Need to have a consistent API that they can then get into contact from the data warehouse in order to access it, in order to then build apps against it and use their framework to analyze that data in order to build systems and solutions and or new applications all the time. Entity relation database are modeling tools used for building databases and loading that data. Data warehouses are there to conduct programming languages extraction and transformation, and give you access to data and provide data APIs, so that you can gain access to the sources of data, and so you can build your apps against those APIs in order to use them in such a means to build what you need for new tools, or creating aggregations of systems. An ETL tool is the system that supports the ETL process of the various things. They also look for flaws in the programming language, and commonly how data gets lost is through programming flaws, and such as did not account for all possible data sources, did not have the ability correctly to make corrections to it, or did to detect where the anomalies exist and then deal with them. So big data analytics cares about those anomalies because they want to eliminate the anomalies in order to better understand what they're looking for the data. So the benefits of this is the transformation from the ETL to a medium repository, such that you can then answer the questions, right? So there are 4 layers to the ETL process: the functional layer, the operational management, the audit, balance, control, and the utility. So questions is which of these layers are all components common to support all layers? The answer is the utility layer, which is what underlines basically your infrastructure layer of how to handle database capabilities and APIs and access to the data. which layers pertains to job streaming, definition related management parameters, scheduling, monitoring, communications, learning. That would be the operational management layer, where you're actually trying to make use of the system, where you're trying to take stuff, monitor what's going in, what's going out, trying to find alerts on when data hits anomalous conditions that are streamed in or entered into the database in a way that can be incorrectly or causing issues for later on down there. So you want to manage how data gets checked in and analyzed so that you can avoid errors long term causing you problems. Which of these layers pertain to balancing controls, job execution, rejects, and error handling, and code management? That would be the ABC layer, the audit balance control. It is there to determine what to do in the event of an error or error handling. Layer to core extraction transform process, that'd be the functional layer. That is where you're actually doing the execution and setting up of the system and the data lake itself. With that is the presentation that I have recorded for this week. Close to 50 minutes on time. Please review this stuff. Please send me questions. I hope to see your activity inside of the class information. And with that, I will see you. Remember that all future classes will be recorded on Monday mornings at this time, roughly, so that you'll have the whole week with which to review the data and the presentation before you need to actually do your homework, and to ask questions of me in case you need to. And with that, I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks, and have a good day. All right, bye. Yes, stop recording.